whatever journey it is, there's always this idea that you have to do more or add more or be more. It's the exact opposite. Chances are the likes of who you and I are talking about and who we work with are doing too fucking much. They need to chill out a little bit. That's more likely than not what we're working with. It's actually about not trying to do more and prove more that you can be enough. It's actually taking stuff away or doing the wrong thing, or what they would see as the wrong thing, overeating calories, or not working out 7 days a week, doing less, fucking up a little bit deliberately, and then seeing the safety in that.
How are you, man? Like, I'm like really pumped for this conversation. But how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. Like I said, I've had a good day of very enlightening calls, clients, team, content. Good, man. Good day. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm a little warm, like we were talking about, but it doesn't help. I'm wearing a hoodie, but otherwise, things are good, man. Things are good. Now I've been following you for a while, and I've been really wanting to have this conversation. And here's what's really funny is I'm not the only one. Like, I've had other people reach out and they're like, "Dude, you should interview Bobby Nutrition." And I think you guys, your content is so aligned and it's so similar. And I think you guys on a podcast would just crush. So, and I kept hearing
That's cool,
that from
man.
multiple people. So yeah.
That's cool, man. I like that. Yeah. And interestingly, Bobby Nutrition hasn't always been what Bobby Nutrition currently is. We change, we grow, right? So I remember doing simple, here's your macros and just the bare basics back in the day. Mm-hmm. And I remember you were one of the first accounts I think I followed. Wow. Like, seriously, like, I'm going back now, like before I even knew how to post a story. And I've even been in your comment section at some point, before you know any better, and you go into comment sections and you become one of the people that gets angry and what have you. Yeah. I remember having an argument with somebody in your comment section. Wow. So yeah, before I did a bit of healing, I was right there.
I love it. Man, it's funny, and it's so funny you say that, because I was the same way, right? Like, the content that I started with is not what actually, to be honest, the version of Jared that was creating content 6 years ago would think this version of Jared is crazy. Because of when I started, I was just posting, I was transitioning from being an in-person personal trainer to an online coach. And so all I knew was exercise stuff. So I was just posting how to do a glute bridge and how to do a goblet squat. And then I got into sustainable fat loss, very Jordan style content and whatnot. And then I started my own healing journey and my own study of books and psychology and all this stuff. And then that's when I found this vein of dieting from the inside out, and it's been game over ever since. But it's just so wild, that constant evolution of ourselves. So
yeah. What if you don't mind me asking? Yeah. I'll flip the interview. What was what's the word? Was there a pivotal moment that started that gave you traction towards you? Was there a start to the healing process, or was it gradual and by accident?
A little bit of both. So a lot changed for me when I started going to therapy. So I for the longest time, I always thought therapy was just for quacks, crazy people, oh, you got 5 personalities up in there, that's who need therapy. But I was wrong. It was the stereotype. Well, what happened was my wife started going to therapy just for her own stuff. And I saw it make differences. So I go, you know what? I think I'll do a mental checkup, because for me, it was so logical, because I saw it start to change for her. And then I had a couple friends, other male friends of mine, who started going to therapy. And I'm like, okay, maybe there's something to this. So I softened up around the idea of it. But then I kind of compared it to weight loss. We have people in our neck of the woods, a client who thinks they're starving themselves all day is great. But we're like, no, you don't understand. So I wondered if I was doing the same thing with stress. So I figured, well, the more successful I become, the higher my stress levels gets, the bigger my business gets, the more life that goes on, I'm going to have more stress. So if I'm not handling my stress well now, maybe I should just do a little mental checkup just to make sure. And so I just went to my wife's therapist, because I'm like, this lady already knows so much about me because of my wife having conversations with her. So I'm like, I'm gonna just talk to her. Well, in that first session, she asked a couple really good questions and I bawled my fucking eyes out. And I go, oh, there's something here. I had the biggest release ever. And we're talking about therapy session number 1. Like, I don't know this lady, but I figured, the more, it's like a client. The more I know about a client, the better I can do my job. So the more she knows about me, the better she can do her job. And I was in therapy for the next 3-4 years straight, working through stuff. And that's where a lot of my healing and a lot of my stuff came from. But then where the second pivotal thing happened for me was when I saw how much of there's in the world of coaching and weight loss and dieting, there's this missing piece. You got diet culture over here, eat less, move more, work harder. Then you got therapy and inner work over here that has nothing to do with weight loss. And I go, man, there's got to be something in the middle here, because so much of people's issues with weight loss is their relationship with food, inner child work, trauma around diet culture, dogma, like going to Weight Watchers meetings with mom at 6. Like, my comment sections, man, are full of people who, like, mom put them on a diet at 7, gave them weight loss pills at 8, had them counting points by 9. And it's like, yeah, no wonder 35-year-old Brenda can't get her shit together. So that's 2 of the main things, like, kind of where I started with it.
Yeah, I think one thing that really sticks out there was when you talked about, what was it? When you had your first session and then it was just like it all came out. Yeah. Like, that's, I mean, if I had a penny for every time I was on the other end of that, just like somebody thinking about joining us and we have that first call, it happened just earlier, wonderful woman. And I don't even think I really probed, to be honest. It was like, how are you? And it was like, gone, because yeah, that was it. It was game over. Because what that alludes to for me, if we want to go, a bit further out with it, is that as a society, I think all most people want to be asked is, can I swear on this podcast?
Please, I would encourage it.
Cool, there we go. I think it alludes to people just wanting to be asked, like, how the fuck are they doing?
Yes.
It just alludes to, like, all people really want is to feel safe, to feel nurtured, to feel comfortable, to feel heard, to finally be understood. And whether it be through their own automated patterns, which will get them stuck in their own holes, and then it's sort of like, reaffirming all of those negative beliefs, and then they keep the toxic people in their lives, and it just snowballs from there. So then they're just kind of stuck, And then all of a sudden, someone comes along and actually asks how the bloody hell that they're doing, and they didn't even realize that's all they needed to be asked, and then it's just like comes out.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a for me, I think I would agree with that completely. I think there's another level to it also, where, like, because you walk through someone in the store and you go, "Hey, how are you?" But they don't actually care. Or they don't actually see you. Like, there's a difference between hearing someone versus listening to them. Like, I can hear the words that you're saying, but if I'm not, like, actually listening and being a space for you, it falls on deaf ears. So I think the other thing to add for me is people need to be actually legitimately asked how the fuck they're doing, but then be in that moment with them of, like, okay, like, I'm here for that. Because most people, I think this is something a mentor of mine I learned early on, was that most people, though, like, they want to be, they're seen or heard by everyone else but themselves. Right? It's why, like, some of them hide their emotions with food, is because they don't want to look at their inner darkness or be a space of love for it. Right? But this is why I think I'm convinced that's why so many people are addicted to, like, the next thing or the next stimulus or what have you. Actually, you bringing that up reminded me. I normally don't get this deep on, like, a consultation, or not consultation, on a kickoff call. Like, when someone signs up to work with me, we have an official, like, let's just have a call to kick things off. I don't want to go too heavy right then and there. Like, it's just the start of it. I had this big, like, beefy dude. Like, this was like a man's man, like, entrepreneur, jacked, lifts heavy, business owner, like doesn't show emotion. And then out the gate, I go, there's something underneath this ginormous shell of a man. And then, but I go, well, what made you want to, like, do this in the first place? And he's like, man, I just can't get a hold of my emotional eating. So I go, oh, so we're hiding stuff with the way with eating. And then the more he talked, the more like he mentioned, like, well, I never get emotional, I never cry, and I'm like, okay, now I know we're really hiding something. And then through just a couple questions, because I don't want to go too, I don't want to force anyone to share what they're not comfortable with. But one thing led to the other, and he said, well, Jared, I'll just tell you. And he basically explained that the last time he showed his emotions was when he was a 13-year-old boy, and it wasn't with him, but a level of sexual assault happened to a family friend, and he couldn't stop the bad guy, so to speak. And so all he, as a 13-year-old boy, assigned meaning of, when I show emotion, my whole family falls apart, right? And when I show emotion, my whole family falls apart. And so he's been running from his emotions from that day forward ever since. And so but during him trying to explain that to me, dude lost it. Like, I literally, when I say he cried out his 13-year-old self, he bawled like a baby, and it was beautiful. And but it's because he'd never actually held space for that little boy before. He'd never held space for those actual emotions to allow them to come through him. And then from that day forward, he never struggled with emotional eating ever again. So
That's cool, man. I think I think as men as well, I get caught up in that. There's a huge difference between getting it intellectually and helping other people with it. And of course, getting it across all spectrums. But man, the shit that I get caught up in, like, my thing is, if ever I feel angry about anything, like, I have such an issue with showing that. Like, my relationship with anger is not great. I never saw fantastic examples of it. So therefore, I don't really know. I feel so much shame every time I go to express anger. I really had to catch myself. And Jess, my fiance, she has to really help me, because she knows when I go inward, when I go quiet, she knows that something's pissed me off, probably something she's done. And I can't get it out. And I have to, this is somebody I consider myself great at helping people. So, when these people, male or female, come to us, that automation that they're stuck in, depending on when they've come to you, that's been there since, 13, further. We work with ladies in their 60s, so one of their main objections is like, is it too late for me? It's like, fuck no. Like, okay, I can't change your past. Can't do that. But we can change everything else. How you see the world, how you feel, how you experience. And people, I think as well, I'm not sure if you get this, but people might say, well, I don't really remember much about my childhood. And what I'll always say is you don't need to remember that conversation, because I think that's the misconception people have. Like, this specific situation created this part of me. And when it's a very significant trauma, of course, that will be the case. But more often than not, it's an amalgamation of how they were consistently left feeling because of perhaps not being heard or being valued or whatever it might be. And therefore, whether it be 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years later, all that person needs to be able to do in that moment is, instead of, I don't really remember what happened, all I have to ask is, generally speaking, how do you feel now? I feel sad. I feel lonely. I feel, that's then you've got it.
Yeah.
Because that's what she was feeling.
That's beautiful. Because I think, I don't know if you've noticed this, that most people will find, I think it is the ego. It's the ego's way of almost like making us think we're holding space, but we make it about the other thing. Like, well, I want to know what the conversation was. Well, like, forget the conversation. What'd you feel? What do you feel right now? Well, I want to know why this happened. Well, okay. It doesn't matter though. You trying to figure it out is a denial of right now. It's a denial of what's going on inside of you. Or here's where it used to get really sneaky with me. I would subconsciously make it about the thing. Well, I feel sad because I missed this opportunity. Well, now I'm making it about the opportunity, not Jared's sad. or I'm anxious because this is going on. This person said this person did this. I'm struggling with this. Okay, hang on. We're making it about the thing now, but we need to bring it back. Like remove the qualifiers. I feel anxious. Period. It's like the whole concept. No is a complete sentence. So is I feel blank. Forget, I don't care if it's because your mom or your wife or it's what do I feel right now, and giving myself the grace to in the space to actually allow it. It's funny you brought up the anger, and I just wanted, because I resonate so much with that was one I recently found out with myself. This is a newer journey for me. So I have a new therapist that I work with. One is I'm actually trying to get my therapist on the podcast, but there's like legal guidelines she can't, unfortunately. But I literally, I'm like, will you come on my podcast and talk about inner child work? Like, I want to do it so bad, but there's legalities, I guess. But that aside the point, I found out, and I mind you, I do consider myself skilled at helping people and be in this space and emotionally acute to all these things. But it turns out, anger is one I struggle with. Not getting angry is I have trouble letting myself feel anger. Like at the beginning of every therapy session, my therapist does a emotional check-in. The past week on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you feel? Anxiety, sad, worried, happy, grateful, content, like those things. But then she'll ask, cool, what about in this moment right now? And across the board, my anger is always a 0. And she goes, I want to lean into that because like you never have anger. And it turns out because I didn't have great examples around anger growing up, I always assumed anger was a really bad thing because I never saw anyone in let's say a father-like figure use anger appropriately. Like just to call it like it is, my dad was a very angry man that was very loud. And I remember more instances than I can say that of this is bad. I'll never do that. I'll never be that. This is bad behavior. But I'm like 13, right? So I just know like I don't want to be like this. So for me as an adult, as anger would come up, I would go, nope, we're not like that. I wouldn't even know that was happening. I would suppress it. So now as it's internally scary. Like there's some like serious inner child stuff going on as I'm now allowing anger when something comes up. I'm like, nope, it's okay. You're allowed to feel angry. Like, obviously I'm not doing anything. I'm not hurting anyone. I'm not yelling at anyone, but I should allow myself to feel the anger. And this is the first time I've ever allowed that to happen. And it's wild. So
yeah, it was a weekend and I'm going back now. Maybe it was when Inside Out 2 had just come out, at least in the UK. Yeah. And I'd had one of those. I had a therapy session with my new therapist. Was it the night before? I think it was the night before, and we touched on this topic. Mm-hmm. And something had happened. Like Jess had done something that I was like, "Oh, that's annoying." And I would normally go, like you say, but this time I went to talk to her about it, and it was. On the surface of things, something so insignificant on the surface of things, but obviously to me, to be able to have that space for Jess to give me that care and that gentle space, obviously to my inner little boy, it just meant everything, and I was just sobbing uncontrollably, and then she held me and she asked me. Because I had told her some of what my therapist had taken me through, and she asked me, she's like, well, how old are you right now? I said 14. And that was huge for me, because I think whenever we do inner child work, I don't know, I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone, but I've always said, how was that 6-year-old or 7-year-old or 8-year-old struggling? And that was always, I think, an unconscious assumption that that's where I should be going. I'd never considered how difficult that teenage version of me was experiencing things. I'd never gone there before. And that was like, because that's where it was really tough for me. Yeah. Relative to, I know everybody has difficult things, but relative to my life, that was really tough for me. And then I went, she was like, what would little Rob do? I was like, I want to go to the cinema. I want to watch a Disney film, and Inside Out 2 had just come out, and that was a mistake. So then I went to see Inside Out 2. Have you seen it yet?
Not yet.
Oh, dude, like if you're going on a healing journey, I'm not going to spoil it for you.
Okay.
go and watch it, because
Okay.
anybody that is going through exactly what you're describing right now, the way that that film captures anxiety is, it's magical, because
Really?
anxiety, especially in our world, can always be like this bad character, this demon, and that's how it starts to portray anxiety in the film. But then there's almost like this incredibly deep, profound psychological perspective on it's just anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's there for a reason. It's protecting us from something. And the way the film portrays that, for me, there was a woman next to me. Like, you could tell we were going through the same shit. And she was next to me, and we may as well have been holding hands. Honestly, dude.
Wow.
Like, it's anybody watching as well.
Yeah.
It's a healer. For our Bobby Nutrition clients, I went straight in the car. I'd gotten in the car. I was still like, I'm okay now. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Got into the car, and I went into the community. You've got to go and watch Inside Out too. It's so great. So I know everyone went to watch it then. Yeah, man.
That's amazing. It's along those lines, though. I think the perspective around the emotions is everything, because everything's the meanings we attach to things. This was one of the biggest realizations in therapy and my own healing that I noticed is so a pattern that I learned early on was this achiever came out. Right? Like this doer of like, oh, we're not good enough. Let's go earn being good enough. Oh, we feel anxiety. That's a weakness. Let's go stomp on anxiety's throat and let's go achieve some shit and get some dope results. That is the pattern that I learned so early on. And then I did this cool thing called open up a business. And then it got even worse. Like, literally the beginning stages of my coaching business is like, oh, I hate myself. I am not good enough. I have all this anxiety and unworthiness in my body. So let me conquer it and go help millions of people.
Oh, yeah.
That started the coaching business,
language.
Right? Well, so here's
Yeah.
the thing. It didn't turn until I got started in this gentleman's material, who's now crazy shit, dude. It came full circle. His name. Do you know who Kyle Cease is?
No.
So Kyle, he's a big New York Times bestselling author kind of guy, but I heard him on a podcast. It changed my life forever. And then I started absorbing his content. Here's what's wild. I was scared to do it, but I asked Kyle to be on the podcast. Kyle came on the podcast, and I'm basically having a damn near therapy session with him and had more stuff going on. And then now Kyle and I are friends, and I've gone to like his last couple of events. He takes
That's
care of me
cool,
and my
man.
wife. Dude, it is. And again, it's actually triggering to this part of me of like, I'm not good enough. But like, he sees something. Like, it's even more healing. I could go on a whole tangent about that.
I'm loving
but like,
it,
to
yeah.
bring it back into what I was trying to say was, what happened is that's where things started to change for me. So and this is another thing in therapy as well that came out is I actually owed my inner child an apology, because I always viewed it as I've got to conquer him. When in reality, it's, like we hear in the achiever world of like, oh, fuck the old self, overcome, conquer, don't be weak, like all of that like achiever jargon. And and I came to realize, hey, that's like a 13-year-old boy who's just scared shitless right now. You don't need to achieve anything. You don't need to conquer this little guy. And my therapist asked me the most powerful question ever. She goes, cool, tell me about him. How old is he? What's wild is, for me, I actually could pull up a picture of the exact place I was at with all my inner child work. It's 13-year-old Jared wearing glasses. Like, I can tell you exactly everything about him. And my therapist said, what's he need? What does he need right now? And dude, I lost it. I'm like, he just needs to be told it's all going to be okay. He just needs loved on. He needs all this stuff. Like, I can even feel it coming up right now. And
Yeah, I can tell, man. I can tell.
Yeah, man. We get into the raw here. So, but it's the first time in my life I've actually loved on this little guy. I've always thought I've had to like conquer all this stuff. It's like, man, this little guy just needs some love. He needs held space for. He needs accepted. He doesn't need fixed. And then ironically, as I've been doing that part, the parts work, it's been tremendously healing. I can't even explain it,
And how long, since she first asked you, what is it that little guy needs? Like, how long ago was that?
Probably maybe 8 months. 8 months to a year. Yeah. So, I mean, it's wild, but it's all, and this is, I think, why the people that like we serve struggle with this kind of stuff so much, is because it goes against the old pattern. The old pattern is, no, if I show love to this thing, then I will fall off. I'll sabotage. The business will burn down. I'll gain all my weight back. But the mind or the ego only can see what it'll lose. It can't measure what it'll gain. Right. So for me, it was, no, if I show this little guy love, then I'll get complacent and then all this bad stuff will happen. But that's not how it works at all. But that's what all the ego sees. So.
Well, I think, like, just think about it for a second. Imagine if we had this like parallel universe where right now that little boy could now see exactly what the fuck you just did for him publicly. Like, you got the tears came. It was real. It was raw. You were asked the question, what did that little boy need? You've just shown the fucking world, everyone that watches this, that he deserves a platform. You just gave him it.
Yeah.
That's fucking magical.
Bro, you're about to make me like lose it again. This is so good. I told you this is also why, like, when I have this gut feeling to not have notes, it's why I rarely have many notes, especially guest interviews, is because I know, especially when I have this extra feeling, it's like, I don't want that to be the star of the show. I want just this moment, So that's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. So for you, what about you with this stuff? For you, where did this shift happen for you with, like, like you said, this is not the kind of content you started creating, and you've obviously been doing a lot of the work. So where did that start shifting for you?
Well, my story is alcoholism, and I've told this story so many times, so I apologize if I bore anyone with it. No. But I was going through, who I was with at the time left because she'd had enough. Therefore, lost the house. Like, it all went right. All the textbook stuff that comes with alcoholism, that all happened. And I was just on the road to sobriety. And my mum and dad said, let's take you away. Let's go to Portugal, where we've always taken you as a kid, right? Just forget about shit for a week. Like, healthy or unhealthy, let's just for a week, and I was like, yeah, cool. And not only am I male, I'm also a male from the north of England. So when you talk about cynical, especially when it comes to like loving yourself and stuff like that, like, we're not great at it inherently. And I was the last person, like you described yourself, a last person to go to a therapy session. The last person. Not only that, and maybe you'll resonate with this, I was almost proud of cynicism, and I think a lot of cynical people are. Yeah. I think it's almost like, well, if I'm cynical, I'm probably right, and I'm going to prove you wrong, right? Loads of ego in that. So I was always the person talking about why things won't work, and then be, pat myself on the back when something didn't work and all that type of stuff. So I had zero conscious incentive to start this stuff. And I remember this book, bright orange book, Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, on the shelf.
Somewhere.
Yeah,
literally
cool, man.
Yeah.
So I know now, like, in hindsight, because we're all healing these days, right? In hindsight, I know a lot of people can kind of shit on that book a little bit because it's kind of obvious. But when it came out, at least for me, like, healing wasn't popular then. It really wasn't. Self-development's pretty trendy now. It really wasn't then. So I was like, let's give it a go. Fuck it. And it was the first time that I had ever had anyone tell me that it was okay to not care what other people thought of me. I didn't know that was a concept. That was a completely new paradigm to me. So when he introduced this to me, like, I don't care how people see it today, because so many books have been maybe, more insightful and what have you since then. But for me personally, where I was at that time, that changed. I owed my life to that book. I owe my
Wow,
life
that's
to it.
beautiful.
And I was just going through it. Paid like I still go back to it now, to see if I ever miss anything. And we're going back years now. And it was the first time that I just became obsessed and just note taking and this and that. And at that point, then I just became obsessed with it. And dare I say it in almost the wrong way, because I was obsessed with figuring it all out, right? But you learn as you go. So it got me started at least. And I just became obsessed. So I had my little orange journal book. My first one is still there. And when I was in my corporate life then, I would have my journal and I would, after every meeting, I would just like take it and just write down, like, how did I feel? What happened there? It didn't have to, because for the first time, I didn't have to get anything perfect anymore. I could just be and do and write. So there was no formula that I had to follow. There was nothing to stop me from starting, because crippling fear of failure, well, if you don't start, you can't fail. Whereas this, there was nothing I had to stick to. There was nothing I wasn't something or nothing after the end of it. It's just what was.
Sure.
So I just felt this freedom to write and study myself. And then I became obsessed with it. And then what I by this point I had met Jess, my now fiance, and she like the story I told you with how she was with me that day with expressing anger, that's just how she is. And I had so many people in my life who, when I wanted to start doing this for myself, they would have, for the right intentions, said, don't do that. It's too scary. Stick to the corporate life. Not Jess. She allowed me, she really allowed me to be me. And I hadn't felt it to that extremity until she came along. And I was the one saying, but what if this, but what if that, but what if this? And she was like, just go and do it. Like, we'll still have each other by the end of it. Just go and do it. And then that's when I started Bobby Nutrition. And that's how then all of that stuff that I was trying to do for myself, I started talking about that through Bobby Nutrition then. And rest is history.
That's beautiful, man. I love that. It is mind-boggling how similar our stories are. Like even with my wife, her name's Shelby. So my wife has been with me since. So our relationship is kind of an anomaly. Like we've been together since she was 13 and I was 15. Like we just celebrated our 10-year wedding anniversary, and I'm 32. And we were together, I think, like 6 years before. Like we've been to get, like, because I'm a little bit older. We have been with each other more of our lives than we haven't been together. Like from a numbers, like from a year's perspective. And it's been like that since the very beginning, where like the way you describe Jess, it's like my wife has been the same way. Is I'm the one that's always like, well, what if this doesn't work, or all this stuff, like again, trying to not to get hurt. And it's just every time she's in the softest, most certain way possible, we'll figure it out. Like that's the magic, is like, hey, but you'll figure it out. You've never not figured it out. You've never not made it happen. And so like when I am at a low and I'm like, fuck, it's like she knows me better than I know me, but also knows exactly what I need. It's like her and that 14-year-old Jared are just like best little buddies, and she's like, what's he need right now? Like it's the most wild thing, but it's beautiful at the same time. So
yeah, they maybe it's what makes us like good coaches. There are coaches, right? Like I can see something in someone. I know when someone turns up to a meeting and says, I'm fine. It's like, no, you're not. I know you're not. You can just tell. And I think when you do have that person who can see through it all, and not just that, kind of calmly and compassionately like execute on that, and not just give you what you need, but get you to give yourself what you need.
yes,
I think that's what I don't. on the surface of it, I don't like the idea of having to depend on someone, right? We've got to work on ourselves and all that sort of stuff, but it's so important
Yeah.
to have that person that can, especially guys like us as well, when it can be so easy to get caught up in that conquer mode. And when we're not, well, therefore we're not enough. And it comes out in all of these really subtle, ugly, and sometimes like rejection-based ways. You know, like I go quiet, for example. Well, what does that do? It keeps people out. It stops people from hurting me. So to have somebody who can come into that cocoon, wrestle their way into it, because they're the only person that can do it, and to get you to come out of that, it's so important, man.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's definitely a difference between like support and codependency, right? I think, those are, there's definitely a difference. So
totally.
Let me ask you this for you, like along these lines of like if so especially someone listening to this is let's say by proxy or by pattern, they're like, no, I don't listen to what I feel. I don't hold space for what I feel. Feelings are bad. My mind won't quit racing. Like the idea of holding space and loving these darker parts of me feels impossible. How do you get someone to start to do it or to start that journey? Because like if someone's never done that, it's like we're shaking up their metaphorical snow globe, and they're like, this is terrifying. So where does someone get started with this kind of work from your perspective?
That's such a good question. A big thing for me is evidence gathering. So the only way that we can, our brains are plastic, we can neuroplasticity and all that. We can change how they experience and feel and shit. So I'm very big on evidence gathering. And I don't know if this answers your question, but if we can, because a lot of this as well comes down to, do they trust you? So that would be the first part. So I think this goes beyond the instruction, because you can give the best instruction in the world. If they think you're an asshole, they ain't doing shit, So I think the first thing is to ensure that you, whether you're a coach or a brother, sister, spouse, what have you, if you can foster safety no matter what this person is saying, no matter how they're pushing you away, if you can foster relentless safety to that person, that's step one. So that's the first thing. But then for the other person, once they are then in that environment, I'm very big on evidence gathering. And I always use the analogy of do you consider yourself religious?
Not religious. I'm not as religious, but definitely spiritual.
So I say I'm exploring spirituality. I'm not. I want to explore what it means to me. But so I'm sort of similar to yourself. Yeah. So let's pretend that you were a diehard atheist, right? And you have this near-death experience, and you see God. He comes to you, or she comes to you, and don't die. You'll be fine. So he says something wiser than that, right?
Right.
It doesn't matter what the Bible says, what science says, or anything. You're going to be hard pressed not to believe in God.
I've seen that exact happen more than once. I've literally seen diehard atheists have like their aorta ruptured, and they literally saw Jesus himself say, "I'm not done with you yet," and he sent him back out. And then all of a sudden, he's like, the doctors are like, "I don't know how you're still here." And now he's the biggest, I've seen it happen a ton. So
exactly. So, I mean, I got goosebumps. Is there anything, when you talk about belief systems, is there anything more powerful than that? Like, that belief ain't shifting. It doesn't matter how many people argue with you. It doesn't matter what the so-called logic does or does not say. That's a belief. So if we can do the same thing for our client, our spouse, whoever it is we're trying to help. If that person feels safe enough to step into something that could give them new evidence to contradict the old evidence, beliefs start to shift then. Now that's scary. It is. There's no two ways around it. I think we love the idea of there not being a cost to this. Well, there is a cost. There's a cost to the safety that you feel. There's a cost to the comfort that food might bring you, that shitting on yourself might bring you, and being cruel to yourself and so forth. But at some point, the advice I would give that person is, at what point do we start looking at the cost of staying in the same place? Because at some point, and this is why a lot of people that come to us, they're typically, they're 40 plus for the most part, 40, 50 plus most of the time. Because when you're in your 20s and 30s, it depends, but a lot of the time, we have enough distractions around us maybe, and not enough pain to have come from our self-limiting choices to heal yet. The automated patterns that we're stuck in, we're okay. We've still got the job. We're not a drug addict yet. We haven't got a divorce yet. And, we keep going. But at some point, we have to then ask, well, at what point is the cost of not doing something going to come into this? Because I know there's a cost and it's going to be scary. I get it. And I'm not going to pretend that it's simple and it's easy, because it isn't. It is scary. So instead of looking at it this would be the advice I would give, instead of looking at it from the perspective of it's too scary, look at it from the perspective of acknowledging that and saying that's okay, and then simply doing a comparison and saying, well, this is what happens if you don't do this. Sometimes, you know what, honestly, Jared, this is real talk. Sometimes that can be too much and it's not the right time right now. Tomorrow's another day. Sometimes that cost, maybe it is too scary. Maybe it is too this or too that. But if you're constantly weighing that up, that's going to win at some point. And all it takes is that one right conversation or that one right breakthrough. All it takes is that one time, and the rest of your life has changed.
That's so good. It's ironically, that's one of the first things that I like to do as well is it has to come down to irrefutable proof that the ego and the brain can't argue with. That's what starts that's a new neural pathway. Then you just automatically align to that. The analogy I've been given a lot lately is well, you can't unsee shit, right? If all of a sudden you gave me the spoiler to that movie, I can't just go watch the movie and forget that. It's well, fuck, thanks, Bobby. You just ruined Inside Out 2 for me. Good job. I can't unhear it. I can't unsee it now. So I'm going to be sitting here bitter the whole time watching the movie if you gave the spoiler away. But it's the same thing. If someone has all this fear, or if they think whatever, the old belief, and then we give them a new result, hey, you ate more than 1,200 calories and nothing bad happened. Hey, you actually held space for your emotions and nothing bad happened. Or hey, you went from working out 7 days a week because you thought you had to now just 2, and you actually lost weight. Whatever the thing may be, you can't unsee that. So I think that's a brilliant way to go about it. So,
and I also think as well, there's something in there. I think what scares a lot of people off is, I think there's always this idea that this, whatever journey it is, there's always this idea that you have to do more or add more or be more. It's the exact opposite. Chances are the likes of who you and I are talking about and who we work with are doing too fucking much. They need to chill out a little bit. Mm-hmm. That's more likely than not what we're working with. So it's actually about not trying to do more and prove more that you can be enough. It's actually taking stuff away or doing the wrong thing, or what they would see as the wrong thing, overeating calories, or not working out 7 days a week, doing less, being fucking up a little bit deliberately, and then seeing the safety in that. I think there's something liberating about that. I think there's something extremely liberating about accepting less as opposed to feeling like you have to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
I
completely agree. Yeah, that's beautiful. But at the end of the day, it's all scary, right? That's where people get caught up is they go to do it, but now there's resistance. It's like, if I don't eat everything on my plate, my dad's going to yell at me again. It's like, well, dad's been gone for like 30 years. Like, you live alone. Like, we're good. But it's like that part is still living rent free in our, in the head, you know? So
yeah. We have to get into the body as well. You know, I think that's the mistake that I made. If I could go back and do things differently through my healing journey, like I said, I was like journaling this and journaling that and journaling this and journaling that. So maybe over intellectualizing everything. I could have articulated my emotions better than my therapist could have, you know? But then by the end of it, a lot of it, I still kind of felt the same. You know, I still felt the same. So I wasn't as efficient with it as I probably could have been. So I think one piece of advice I would give everyone as well is move a bit, breathe a bit. You know, 'cause this thing over here, you can, if you hate yourself, guess what you're going to journal about, right? So if this thing is still not, if this thing isn't calm, we need to get this thing calm first. We need to get out. We need to move. We need to get the blood into the limbs and move a bit. We need to breathe a little bit. We need to shout, scream, hit a punch bag. It's what my therapist calls it. He calls it like it's something like the Hit 100 Club. You know, you buy, you get a pillow, or if you're willing to shell out, buy a punching bag. Go to the store, baseball bat, and 100 good blows either side.
That's a lot.
Just to physiologically, it's a lot, man. You'd be tired. Yeah. So physiologically get it all out, but I'd be damned if you don't feel better after that. And guess what? Yeah. You haven't intellectualized shit, but you feel better. Well, what does that tell you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. Like that energy's got to go somewhere, right? Well, we that's why like there's the classic book, The Body Keeps Score. It's because our body quite literally does, and we'll hold on to, like, if I have like this anxiety or this fear or this anger, and I hold on to it, and my body stores it. It's why we cry and have these releases when we have breakthroughs, because it doesn't have anywhere else to go but on our eyes, right? So, but I totally agree. Like one of the common things I'll have people do if they're really struggling, I go, take your anxiety on a walk. Like actually go on a walk with your anxiety, like almost like you would walk your dog. Go walk your anxiety, and like just talk through it. Like, I'm anxious because of this. This is happening. I feel this. Why does this have to? This is so unfair. Whatever. But like, there's something magical that happens is when you hold space and move your body. My only problem is when people say working out's my therapy, and then they use that as a suppressive tool. I've heard you say this before. Oh, I fucking hate it. It's like, no, working out is your suppressive tool. Like, don't get me wrong. I think movement is great. It's one of the best things that you can do for your mental health. But when you have stuff that needs unpacked, that you need work through, and there's like, imagine like, I always like to give children examples and analogies. So like, imagine, I think of like a child whose dog died. His little best friend got smoked by a car in front of him. Like, he's playing with Rover and the dog gets hit by the car. And then the kid's obviously devastated. So you say, just go work out. I'll get you a new one. Like, just go work out. You'll be fine. Like, that's the worst thing you could. That kid just saw his best friend get ran over. But then telling the little kid, like, just go work out because you'll feel better. Like, no, we need to sit with that little boy and let him cry for a little bit first. Then we can go do an activity.
Yeah, man. Yeah. One thing that I'm absolutely adamant about is, I think socially, we dissect ourselves a wee bit too much. Like, here we have the so-called successful people. Here we have the fit people. Here we have the fit successful people. Here we have the therapy people. When, like, it depends on the person, but when you see that ultra fit person, they could be doing that healthily. But there's also quite a strong chance that, are they doing it from a place of empowerment and strength? Is that why they're working out? Or are they doing it from a place of, if I do not do this, I am worth nothing? Are they doing it from a place of lack and fear and this fear of actually exploring your emotions, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree, man. It's shit's wild, man. This is what pisses me off so much when people say, "Oh, it's just eat less, move more." I'm like, really? Like, this whole game is just eat less, move more, and that would have fixed all of this right here.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It is. It's I I don't know about who you work with, but who we work with, she knows what to do. Like they eat less, move more. Like they get it. It's about a willingness to. I think shame is the word that pops up for me. It's a willingness to challenge the shame. Finally,
Yeah.
shame is if you were to. I remember I saw a great speaker once who was talking about his alcoholism journey, and he said if you break the heads open of every, he said addict, but I'd like to place all of us under this that struggle in some way or another, that use coping mechanisms, whether it be good coping mechanisms like the gym or something like alcohol. If you break every one of those people open, the one key ingredient that will be consistent throughout every single one of them will be shame. The one constant thing that will undoubtedly be consistent in every single one will be shame. Because I almost envy some of these people, especially some of my friend group, because they can go out and get drunk. And it's not that I envy, but they've always been able to go out and get drunk, but then just have this empowered nature to say no, and I never had that. I never had that when I was going through my drinking days and everything that led up to it. I was always, there was always this desire to escape a little, be a bit more. I suppose when you drink, you're confident, right? Be someone else, be someone who you're not. So I always envy these people who could, yeah, cool, we'll go out, we'll get pissed, or we'll do this, or we'll do that, but they can just so confidently say, I don't need that. From a place of empowerment and choice.
Mm-hmm. I'd never thought about that, because I'd always, if you were to say, Jared, what do all these people with coping mechanisms, good or bad, have in common? I go, suppression. Like we're suppressing with the thing because whatever is here, we don't want to feel it, whether it be sad, angry, shameful, whatever. But I've never even thought about like the underlying, which underlying emotion is there, and I never thought about shame. But I can 100% see it from like back in the day when I would hide my emotions with productivity. It's because I was feeling ashamed of what I was feeling. I thought had anxiety meant I was weak, or being sad meant there was something wrong with me. Or if I was going to feel angry, I'd be like this person. And then the people that I work with, like I would totally see like they don't want to feel, they shouldn't feel sad. They shouldn't feel angry. So that's brilliant. I had never thought of that.
Yeah, because it's like, why suppress it? There's no reason to suppress something we're proud of. We'd be showing it to the bloody world, right? So, shame is the most toxic emotion there is. It's we have to experience it. We have to develop a relationship with it. But it's like this. The analogy that I always use is it's like that. When you watch a film and sometimes we get those films where we get to know the bad guy a little more. And then once we get to know the bad guy, and maybe even the good character in the film gets to know the bad guy, we're left with this impression of, oh, well, they're not so bad after all. Because we understand their origin story. We understand where it came from. That's what shame is for me. It's not this thing to be locked away, because guess what you're going to be doing? You're going to be calling it the bad villain the whole time, and you're going to be avoiding it at all costs. And then you're going to be shoving it down with whether it's working out, sex, drugs, alcohol, people pleasing, saying yes to meetings you should be saying no to, not setting boundaries, whatever. We're always going to be suppressing it because underneath is this fear of this shame. Whereas if we let it in for a cup of tea, as we would in the UK, and develop a relationship with it, it's like the anxiety. Mm-hmm. Go for a walk with it.
Yeah. I love that. Well, so let's say someone's listening to this and they're like, yeah, you're right. I have all this shame and I don't know what to do with it. How should they start to approach healing their relationship with shame?
Just like I said, I think.
Yeah.
What would the first step be? It would depend on It would depend on their backstory, I think. So that's where I would start, me personally. So this is how I do things. So first of all, maybe I'm skipping a step here, but I suppose the first thing they would have to do is, whether it's me, you, a therapist, take the leap and have that first conversation. If I was having the conversation with them, it would be so what your therapist asked you, which would be, how are you feeling right now? Cool. Sad. We'll get there eventually, even if they can't identify the feeling straight away. I'm sad, I'm lonely, I'm anxious, I feel shame. We'll get to shame. I always know we will. We'll always get to shame in the end. I know we will. So it's just asking enough open-ended questions to get to the shame. Then where I'd direct the conversation, if I felt invited enough to, would be to ask, well, if you were to close your eyes for a second and really picture, and I in detail, what did that little 8, 9, 10-year-old girl, boy, what did they look like? How did they, what was start simple. What was the hair like? How did they like their hair? Did they put gel in it? Was it short back and sides if you were a dude? Pigtails if you were a girl? What was their favorite outfit? Was it tracksuit? Like, did they wear Velcro shoes, laces? And just get in touch with that simple stuff. The more you get in tune with that detail, the more then, well, maybe we can start to see a room or an environment. Maybe there's other people there. As soon as we know who those other people are, that's who we're going to talk about. And then as we get more in tune with that, it's, how does she look or he look? How do they look? What's their face saying? And they wouldn't have even, when we said before, oh, I can't remember what happens. Now all of a sudden, guess what? It starts to become all a little bit clearer. Yeah. And well, how is she feeling? And then it will normally be misunderstood, alone, sometimes scared. And I would simply ask, well, you're looking at her right now. Imagine walking up to her. Because what you've essentially alluded to me, without even telling me about your upbringing, you're telling me about what he or she did not get. So what I want to know is, you have an opportunity right now in front of her to give her what she needs. What is it? That's how I would heal a relationship with shame, because that's where it all started.
That's beautiful. It's interesting. I think most people are just like, what's the quick fix I can do now? But it's like, well, hang on. We need to get all who is this individual? What do they look like? What state are they? What state are they're in? How do they walk, talk? Cool. Then the magic question: what do they need? Then give them what they need. That's beautiful.
Man. Yeah,
I love that.
It's maybe it's because I've been doing it a little while, but I don't think this stuff is rocket science. And I think if most people really started this stuff, they do a great job, right? The difficult, it's us that's the problem. We're the problem. We get in our own way. We sabotage. We can help all these other people, but when it comes to ourselves, all of us have blinders on. Yeah. Therapists, you have a therapist. My coaches have therapists. There's no shame in that. It's part of the human condition to get in your own way. Mm-hmm. It's not about being perfect. It's about being okay with being imperfect.
That's so good. Man, this has been the best interview ever, and I didn't even have notes. I love this so much. Dude, I appreciate you doing this. This is awesome. Where before I forget, where can people find you? So those that are like, where's Bobby Nutrition been my whole life? So where can people find you who want to learn more about you and your stuff?
Go over to the gram at Bobby Nutrition, as it sounds, all one word, Bobby Nutrition. You want some help? My messages are always open. Simple as that.
Hell yeah. I love it, man. Well, again, dude, I really appreciate you doing this. I'm glad you're feeling better today. I know we were, last time we chatted, we were going to do this. I totally get it. I struggle. I have some sleep stuff going on, so I totally get it. So, but again, I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I've got when I've got a 2-year-old, so she's got the chicken pox at the moment. Bless her. So we're trying to juggle at the moment. So a lack of sleep happens here and there. So I appreciate you rescheduling, man. Really good of you.
course.
And it's been a great conversation. Absolutely loved it.
I love it. Awesome, brother. Well, I'm going to stop the recording and then we will talk soon.